For 8 years, the press liked to call President Reagan the great communicator, yet one of his greatest frustrations during those 8 years was his inability to communicate to the American people and Congress the seriousness of the problems the country faced in Central America. A few days following the Reagan inauguration in 1981, U.S. intelligence obtained incontrovertible evidence that the Marxist government of Nicaragua was transferring hundreds of tons of Soviet arms from Cuba to rebel groups in El Salvador. Although El Salvador was the immediate target, the evidence showed the Soviets and Fidel Castro were targeting all of Central America for a communist takeover. El Salvador and Nicaragua were only a down payment. Honduras, Guatemala, and Costa Rica were next. Then would come Mexico. The plans had been in the archives of communism for a long time.
My fellow Americans, I must speak to you tonight about a mounting danger in Central America that threatens the security of the United States. This danger will not go away. It will grow worse, much worse, if we fail to take action now. I'm speaking of Nicaragua, a Soviet ally on the American mainland, only 2 hours flying time from our own borders. With over $1 billion in Soviet blockade, the communist government of Nicaragua has launched a campaign to subvert and topple its democratic neighbors. Using Nicaragua as a base, the Soviets and Cubans can become the dominant power in the crucial corridor between North and South America. Established there, they will be in a position to threaten the Panama Canal, interdict our vital Caribbean sea lanes, and ultimately move against Mexico. Should that happen, desperate Latin peoples by the millions would begin fleeing north into the cities of the southern United States or to wherever some hope of freedom remained.
Nicaragua's Sandinista government grabbed power in 1979 after the overthrow of dictator Anastasio Somoza. It promised free elections, a free press, free enterprise, and an independent judiciary. But within weeks, the Sandinistas began replacing one dictatorship with another. They seized the television and radio stations, began censoring newspapers, and crushing whatever democratic sentiment they encountered as violently and ruthlessly as Somoza had ever done, while allying themselves with Castro, Moscow, and the Eastern Bloc. During his first year in the White House, the administration launched an initiative aimed at helping Caribbean and Central American countries narrow the great economic and social inequities that made many of them ripe for subversion and revolution.
The United States Congress has before it a proposal to help stop this threat. The legislation is an aid package of $100 million for the more than 20,000 freedom fighters struggling to bring democracy to their country and eliminate this communist menace at its source.
They also drafted a plan to help meet the threat of communism in Central America by helping freedom-loving Nicaraguans halt the flow of Soviet arms into Nicaragua and El Salvador. These men, just a few at the outset, were the nucleus of Nicaragua's Contra freedom fighters. In late 1982, opposition began to develop in Congress against supporting the Contras and the Salvadoran government. The president's battles with Congress over Central America would continue for the duration of his presidency. Time and again, the president would speak on television to a joint session of Congress or to other audiences about the problems in Central America, hoping the outcome would be an outpouring of support from Americans who would then apply the same kind of pressure on Congress that helped pass the economic recovery package. But opinion polls usually found that large numbers of Americans cared little or nothing about what happened in Central America. In fact, a surprisingly large proportion didn't even know where Nicaragua and El Salvador were. And among those who did care, too few cared enough about the communist penetration of the Americas to apply the kind of pressure the president needed on Congress.